everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar focuses on empowering women in the workplace, and it's brought to you by amazing women from RBC, starting with Vivian Lee. She's a senior manager. And there's Swetha Kola. She's also a senior manager for strategy and transformation. And then next to her is Izabella, Senior Manager for Newcomer Client Strategies at RBC. And then we've got Ritika, Senior Manager for Strategic Segments and Home Equity Planning. And my name is Sonia Siddiqui, and joining me today is Shelly Fang. We're both from ACCESS Employment Online Services.
Hi everyone, this is Vivian Lee. I'm currently the Senior Manager for RBC's Inclusive Recruitment team. I'm an immigrant myself. I came to Canada around 15 years ago. So I definitely understand as a newcomer, as an immigrant, the barriers everybody's facing when it comes to a new country and experiencing a new culture. And on top of it, to look for a job. So we're very happy here today to provide everyone some tips and advice in terms of job searching, especially as a woman. All the work-life balance topics that we're going to cover.
Thank you so much, Vivian, and we'll hand it over to Swetha.
Hello everyone, my name is Swetha. I work at RBC. I'm a senior manager here in the Strategy and Transformation Department. So my work involves helping the business leaders make good decisions for the future of RBC. And I do want to call out, Vivian has been a huge factor in making RBC a very diverse and inclusive place. And thank you, ACCESS, for giving this opportunity to share our lessons and experiences.
Thank you for coming on board with us. I guess, Ritika, if you could go next, and then Izabella.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ritika Goel, and similar to Vivian, I am an immigrant as well. So I came into the country about 7 years ago, and I came in to do my MBA at the University of Western Ontario, which is now called Western University. So at the Ivy School of Business. And from there, I have been with RBC since completing my graduation. So currently, I am a senior manager within the home equity financing business of RBC. I look at the mortgage acquisition, so our residential mortgage acquisition portfolio. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. That's a nice story to tell too. I want to actually know how you grew into that position because you started from graduation, so that's great to know. And Izabella?
Hi, I'm Izabella Wilczynska. I'm also immigrated to Canada. It's been a while though. I came here when I was 17. So I did do a couple of years of high school, then university, graduate school, and now I'm at RBC working with my colleagues here to help newcomers prepare for their life in Canada by getting financial services at RBC. I'm responsible for the newcomer client segment for RBC.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. And I'm so glad that we have the right team for our audience today. And we can't wait to hear more from you, ladies. So, Vivian, I'll throw it over to you, and then you can moderate the questions.
Yeah, sure. So first, I would like to introduce a little bit about RBC. And Sunny, do you have this slide ready for the RBC?
I can get it out for you.
As long as getting the presentation slide, I can talk through. So RBC is Canada's largest bank, and we are one of the largest banks in Canada. I do have, instead of me going through all the facts, we do have a short video.
No, I wasn't. I never received that one. So.
Okay, sorry about that. So I will just go ahead and introduce about RBC. So we're one of the largest banks in the world, and we employ around 76,000 employees globally. I just want to ask everybody to take a wild guess at how many countries do we operate in globally. I give everybody a second, and then I will give you an answer. How about our panelists? Can you take a wild guess? How many countries do we operate in?
I think in about 26.
That's very accurate. So between 37 to 40 countries, sometimes we have a little bit of difference. So yeah, so we have our personal and commercial banking business, which a lot of our panelists here today are from the business where we provide personal and commercial client services. To across Canada. We also have a capital markets, wealth management, and a lot of our business are global. We have our RBC insurance, and we also have a lot of back office employees. For example, I am from HR, and I'm a back office employee. We also have RBC IT is actually the second largest employer in IT in Canada. So we hire a lot of technology people to help us transform the bank for the future. So that's a little bit about the bank. And in terms of our diversity practice, RBC is considered actually one of the best diversity employer in Canada. We have over 30% of our representation are visible minorities, which means a lot of visible minorities are actually immigrants. And I would also ask our panelists to give a wide guess. How many languages do you think we support our clients in? Sorry to put you on the spot. I'm sorry, I don't have any other guesses.
I'd say 20.
We actually serve our clients in over 200 languages. Where do you think that those clients and our how can we make that happen? So it's because our hiring policy is to hire from the community to serve the community. So we hire a lot of immigrants who can speak the language and provide service to their community, which include not only the language, the spoken language, but also someone who can use American Sign Languages to provide services to different people who have a hearing impairment. So all those amazing diversity policy actually comes from our goal, our purpose to help our clients thrive and communities prosper. So that's a little bit about our RBC and our diversity practice, and we really look forward to hearing from you and your background. Hopefully, one day, if your career interest lies with the RBCs, look for talent. One day we maybe have the opportunity to carry the conversation. So without further ado, because today's conversation is mainly about our panelists providing their career advice and tips to you as a potential job seeker when you come to Canada, I'd like to start the questions to our panelists. So first, one question I'd like to ask to each panelist is, tell us about your first job searching experience in Canada, and how were you able to, what were the challenges, some of the challenges you were facing, and how were you able to successfully land the job the first time? How about I start with Ritika, you're on my side.
Great, sure. So happy to answer. And thanks, Vivian, for the question. So I think, as I mentioned before, I actually came to Canada to do my MBA. And when I was doing my MBA, as part of the regular process, you start looking for jobs, and you start, going into the recruiting cycles that the school sets you up for. So with me being a newcomer in the country and being only a few months in the school itself, when you had to start finding a job, I think one of the things that came to me very quickly is that you have to look at what you've done in your country of origin or the country that you come from, and you need to see how to adapt it to, to what employers in Canada are looking for. So I think that's very important, that how do you position your international experience, and how do you position all the experience that you bring in to what employers in Canada are looking for. And sometimes this seems very intuitive and very logical, but I think the good thing that, something that really helped me is for me to bounce off some of these ideas with my friends who were Canadian and who'd worked in the Canadian marketplace. So it was really good for me to validate with them that, am I positioning myself correctly? Is this what Canadian employers are looking for? Or am I going into too much detail of my international experience, which maybe is not as relevant to the employers here? So I think that is one way that, one of the ways that I felt that I could sort of deal with the challenges that came with looking for a job as a newcomer.
Thank you, Ritika. That's definitely very, very good, valuable advice. And we do actually value the international experience, because when you come to Canada, a lot of the times the challenge the newcomer faces, well, you don't have a Canadian experience, right? But how can you, I think it's very important during the interview process, or even in your resume, highlight the skills that will add value to the job you're applying for. Not necessarily Canadian experience, but some relevant experience you are doing in your home country. And sometimes international experience can add value and become your competitive advantage. For example, we are going through this whole banking transformation in Canada, but in a lot of European countries and Asia countries, those banking transformation has already happened. So what you have experienced can actually add great value to the Canadian banking industry. So think about that, what makes you stand out. So next, I'm going to move to Swetha. Please tell us a little bit about how your job searching journey went when you first came to Canada.
Sure. Mine is a little different. The background is very similar to Ritika. I came here to do my master's. I came here 4 years ago. And during my MBA program, applying to any company was just very frustrating, because it felt like all the resumes were just going into a black hole without a lot of responses or any such things. However, I did land a job, and it's very interesting because I got nominated for a leadership conference while I was doing my MBA program. And in that leadership conference, I was just being myself, confident, assertive, asking questions, engaging with people. And one of the RBC heads found me there and asked me to come join RBC and work for them. So what I'm trying to contrast in this situation is that when I had to pursue an opportunity by myself in the regular traditional path that a lot of us immigrants know of, which is apply for a resume and then wait for an answer, it did not work. But going out there and being in the presence of people who have connections in the employment industry, or where you're able to exhibit your skills and capabilities for them to notice and ask you to come join, is a very big part of the Canadian work culture, I would say. So that through that, I want to highlight how important networking and personal branding becomes in Canadian economy.
Yeah, I would definitely echo your point as well as so from a recruitment perspective, I can give everybody some information, from the recruiter and HR perspective and hiring manager. For every job we post, we usually receive between 500 to 1,000 resume applications. So what makes you stand out as a newcomer? You don't have some other banks experience that we're looking for, or some so-called Canadian experience. So networking is a very important component, and I understand as a newcomer, you would ask, what is, where do I start, right? So we're actually going to offer a webinar session just on how to network and how to build your, connections in Canada, because a lot of the jobs in Canada are actually obtained through networking. So stay tuned for that webinar session. So next, I'd like to invite Izabella to tell us a little bit about your job searching journey.
So I'll give you 2 examples, because my first job that I found, I was still a student and I was looking for any work experience. At this point, I had 0, because where I was from Poland, students did not work in high school. It wasn't something that you did. There were no part-time jobs. So I'd never had a job before, and I had to find part-time work. So I ended up at Tim Hortons, but it took a lot of walking around and handing out my resume and trying to convince people to hire me with absolutely 0 experience. However, I want to jump forward a number of years to when I was looking for my first post-MBA job. I graduated in 2009, which was a really bad time to graduate. And I wasn't lucky enough to get a job during campus recruitment. And it took me about 10 months to find the role I wanted. I was very focused on management consulting, did not want to take just anything in business. And also, like Swetha, it's the networking helps. So I tried to volunteer in a number of different organizations, found one that was specific for management consultants, and I found out that they actually had a mentorship program. I signed up to the mentorship program, and the mentor I was assigned, after we met for a few times, somebody asked him if he knew of anybody who's looking for a role. He mentioned my name, and that's how I got the interview and landed the role. So networking definitely saved me, but it did take a while. It took 10 months.
Yeah, so I actually had some similar experience, but like you said, it might take between say 6 months to a year for you to find the ideal role, but the key is being patient and being persistent. And if you have some goal in your mind, be persistent and do not get frustrated that easy. And we know we all went through the journey. We all understand that it's not easy, but as long as you are persistent and you keep building the skills and they broaden your network, one day it will happen to you. So I got my first job, from a volunteering experience. I was new. I just graduated from my HR program, and I was volunteering at a big hospital in Toronto. At that time, they happened to have a contractor position for just 2 months. I was volunteering at their recruitment reception desk, and I got a job. So a lot of times, the volunteering experience as well as networking do play a very important role. So thanks everyone for providing your insight on job searching. Now let's come to the topic of being a woman. So we all come from all over the world, and the way women are treated are different from different countries in the world, and as well as in Canada. I will share my own experience. I remember when I came from China. I remember when I graduated from China, it was very frustrating as a female graduate, because even a lot of the government jobs, I would say over 80% of the government jobs is, indicating male only, right, or male preferred. So think about the whole society and how difficult it is for women to build or advance their career. And even when I came back to China just this year, I noticed in the statistics there's still over 14% of the government jobs that are for men only. But in Canada, I just want to give a brief introduction about the Canadian workplace policy. We are, women is actually considered one of the employment equity groups. We're putting a lot of effort in terms of helping women find jobs as well as advance women's careers. Within RBC, we have a lot of women-related initiatives. We have multiple women employee resource groups, which help bring our female employees together, help them create networking opportunities as well as mentorship. Like Izabella mentioned, the mentoring is very important to us as well. We have a lot of hiring initiatives that targeting women. For example, women in IT, women in personal and commercial banking, women in capital markets, women in wealth management, because we do want to hire from the community to serve the community. A lot of our clients are female, and they would ask for a female financial planner, female financial advisor, and bringing a female into the workforce help us to be more innovative in terms of our solution. So just for that, I'd like our panelists to tell us a little bit about your experience as a female from when you were in your home country. What was your experience? It might be interesting for me to hear as well. And what are some of your advice to our female candidates out there? This time I'll start with Izabella.
Thank you. So surprisingly, my experience has been that when I arrived, I found a lot more expectations being put on women in terms of the type of roles and the type of behavior. So where I'm from, there's less of an expectation that women are not sort of good insiders or engineers. There's none of that. And behaviors are sort of similar between males and females. I think the biggest one and the biggest obstacle for me that I'm actually still struggling with is the assumption that women are supposed to be nice at all times and smile at all times. And that's a difficult one when you're sort of working on something, you're in a stressful situation. Being aware of that, I think, goes a long way, because you may say the same things, it's just how you say them makes a difference. So they're very, very subtle. Like in terms of opportunities, Canada is a great country and nobody will hold you back. But the little subtle expectations or behavior, it's that what people pick up on, and that's how they will respond to you differently depending on how you behave yourself or present yourself.
Thank you, Izabella. I don't know, on my end, I think I lost the volume a little bit for a short period of time. I don't know whether the audience were able to hear, but if you do have questions and you were not able to hear Izabella's sharing, please do ask a question after the panel discussion. So next, how about Swetha? What was your experience as a female candidate and an employee, and just generally?
Sure. My first thing started with the language, because even though I was schooled in an English medium school, the language here was so different in terms of accent and everything. And I used to be a student who was a topper in English subject all the time. I got like a $10,000 scholarship from TOEFL because I was so good in it. But when I came here, like everything was like an alien language to me. So just starting with those slow things, and understanding that. So one of my mentors actually here told me that if you're not able to understand someone, it is their responsibility also to make sure that you understand. It's not always on you that you make the effort to understand what they're saying. And that changed my perspective so much that I was able to tell people, hey, I know you're speaking really fast. Can you slow down for me? Or I follow you, but this is not something I get. Can you explain to me what it means? Right? So those kind of things. So language was the first thing I would say. The second thing is that there are so many things that happen informally here in Canada, and I'm sure it's the case in a lot of cultures, where like boys get together and discuss a lot of things, whether it's project stuff or make decisions and all those things. And I'm a person who neither drinks nor smokes, so I don't gel too easily in those informal groups. And the whole female thing about my work will get recognition for me and my work will speak for me. I was of that mindset. So that was something I had to like overcome and build those relationships to be in the know of what kinds of opportunities exist. The third thing was in my head, I would say, just feeling intimidated, assuming that everybody around me was more qualified and superior to me. So that was something I had to work to overcome, because that was not always the case. It was just that I felt like someone who's been there in their home country for a long time, or someone with more experience, was always more qualified, and that I was not even supposed to belong in that place. So just struggling with those mental demons of myself in terms of confidence, those were the three most important things that were at the beginning of my career stage. Yeah.
Thank you. I really loved your points about, all the points you talked about. For me, the same thing. Language has always been a kind of, how to say, a barrier, I would say, not only when we're looking for a job, but also in terms of career development. So I once asked my son, I said, hey, I want to improve my pronunciation. Can you help me out when you notice that I made a mistake or whatever? My son, he grew up here, right? He came here when he's 6, so he would look at me and said, so where do you want me to start, Mom? I was, at that time, there was constant pressure, because you are here in the Canadian workplace and you are facing a lot of times your colleagues are English is their native language, and especially when in a role where communication skill is highly demanded and requested. So that kind of pressure we put. Not only, I think I did some reflection afterwards. It's really not the expectation from outside. It's the expectation we put on ourselves. So we need to be comfortable saying, hey, I am an immigrant and English is not my first language. Sometimes I don't speak perfect English, but I can deliver what is asked, and I do have the skills and experience needed to do a good job. So that is something that we need to come to terms with ourselves, and it's a personal growth. Definitely, I would echo, Swetha for sure. And definitely as a woman, and I work in recruitment, we provide a lot of unconscious bias training to our recruiters and hiring managers. Sometimes women would tend not to say discuss their achievement. They're not so comfortable. In some cultures, having the eye contact might not be the norm. So there are a lot of things, new things to learn, of course, as a newcomer in Canada, but never put the pressure that you have to do everything perfect at the very beginning. That's just something I want to add to Swetha's point. So last but not least, we have Ritika. How about you? Share, please do share some of your insights.
Sure. Great. So, so my experience has been a little bit different in that I was fortunate enough, I grew up in India for most part, and then after that, I was working in Singapore. But the family that I grew in and the workplaces that I'd gone to, I'd never seen that difference between a woman and a man. So it was a very sort of pleasant experience, and I always got like sometimes even more than what my brother had gotten. So I always grew up in a very, very equal environment. When I came to Canada, again, like RBC is a great, great place in terms of diversity, in terms of diversity amongst gender or diversity amongst ethnicities. The one thing that I did see is when I joined RBC, I actually joined a lot of women in management type of groups because, as you move into different phases of your life, you need to sort of uncover a few more things around you. And what I came to realize after joining these women in management groups is that there's so many things that you don't like, even if you haven't had that difference of being seen as a woman or being seen as a man, it's just about the few things that you need to be aware of as a woman. So, for example, the one women in management group, the conversation that I was in, it was really about like how do women, look at a job opening, and when do they decide that it's right for them to apply versus how does a man do it. So for a woman, they have a checklist, and within that checklist everything should meet, like if there is a job opening, it has 10 requirements. For a woman, they need all those 10 requirements to be checked. But for a man, the confidence level is completely different. They might be okay with only 6 of those requirements being met, and they might just go and sort of position themselves for the job. So those are the kind of realizations that I had from these women in management, and the women sort of discussion items, that as a woman I evolved further because I was more aware of what am I doing, and what am I not doing. And in a workplace which is so equal, which gives you an equal opportunity for everything, you need to make sure that you're not holding yourself back. So as a woman, you need to be aware of things that that women can be their worst enemies, right? So you need to be sure that you don't hold yourself back, and you are as confident as any man is in the room, and you make sure that you bring out the same sort of the same sort of positioning, same sort of personality, as you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a very good point. I would definitely echo, because we were doing some survey and research. We understand that, say, if the job posting says you need 5 years experience to do the job, if a woman has 4.5 years of experience, they wouldn't apply, right? And the same thing happens when it comes to a compensation negotiation. Sometimes it will be like a woman would not comfortable saying, "Hey, I deserve this range of salary being paid," right? So it's up to us to take on that courage and ask the question that need to be asked. Yeah. Another thing is, I think I want to be mindful of our time, and I want to ask the panelists one last question before we have the opportunity to open up for the discussion or questions. The question I want to ask is, what are some of the I would say top 3 advice you give to the candidates, both from job searching and a career development perspective, and you can also touch on being a woman. And this time I'll start with Swetha.
Okay. There are a ton of things you can do, and there are a ton of books outside too. But what I would strongly recommend is that you actually implement all the advice that you get, whether it is from books or people. The number one thing in the Canadian economy context will be to network and know how to personally brand yourself, which is always be prepared. Like in my case, in a conference, I did not know I would end up meeting a person who's heading RBC who would hire me instead, right? So always being prepared with your resume, with your elevator pitch, creating opportunities for yourself. That is, maybe you volunteer like Vivian did, or you put up your hand if you're at workplace. Those kind of things really help. Something I really want all of us newcomers to understand is that people who have experiences in their home countries are really good with their technical skills. So you don't have to worry about that. What you have to focus on is the soft skills, the confidence, the articulation, the business communication, those kind of aspects, and then you'll become a complete package.
Thank you. Thank you. Those are great points. Next, I'd like to invite Izabella.
Thank you. So I want to echo Swetha's point on building your network. I think that's the number one thing. And here I would think beyond just professional network. I would think about finding friends. So even joining a sport or some kind of social activity, because you never know who's going to know people that can help you. Taking a course is a great way to meet people in the similar field. Your instructor may know of people who are looking for employees. Volunteering, not-for-profit, those are great opportunities. I also think it's important to, even though you may have great skills, to keep on upgrading them. So taking just one course may help because it shows that you're dedicated to your career and you have something new on the resume that comes from Canada, the country where the employer resides. And finally, finding a mentor. There's a lot of organizations that are associated with either a profession or not-for-profit, so you can probably find a mentor. It could be temporary, it could be remote, but it's a very great opportunity that would not oversee because it helped me so much finding my first job after MBA.
Amazing point. And last but not least, how about Ritika?
Thanks. So I think Swetha and Izabella have covered a lot of points that even I had in my list, but I think so branding is definitely like know how to brand yourself and know how to sort of market yourself, because that is very, very critical to how you can position and succeed in the market. The second thing was really about retooling and reskilling yourself. So as Izabella had mentioned previously, like don't be afraid of taking that one course. It might be an hour, it might be 2 hours, or it might be a week-long course, but like, simple courses, like if you feel that, you need like a course in public speaking, or if you need a course in PowerPoint presentation. So anything like that, like retooling and reskilling yourself always helps, and it, always benefits you in every phase of your life. The third thing that I did want to sort of mention is, I think this is an advice that I'd gotten, when I was in school. And this is something that, someone told me that, as you sort of look at what you want to do, as you look at your career, it is always easy to teach technical skills. So technical skills is something that you can always learn. But what you have to focus in on is what is the cultural fit? So, what is the cultural fit? Like, how do you fit into a culture? And for that reason, I would say just look at being adaptable, look at like, how do you fit into your new surroundings and how do you make it a pleasant experience for you? Because the better you fit into the organization that you're in, growth will come to you. And in terms of the technical skills, there are always sort of courses and there's always things that you can continue to do. But it's just about like, you need to know like, what your attitude is, what how positive you are about the thing, and that will that will be the one big differentiator that will carry you through.
Completely agree. Like mentally be prepared. That's it. Prepare yourself mentally and be open to change.
Thanks for all the great tips from everybody. Next, I would like to pass back on Sunny to see whether anybody have any questions.
Thank you, ladies. That was very informative, and I'm sure that our viewers have a lot of questions. So the questions are already coming in, but everyone, I'll give you a few moments to put your words together and ask your questions, and you can even direct them to either Vivian, Ritika, Izabella, or Swetha, so that I can ask them directly. In any case, the screen that's up right now, if you do have any more questions regarding RBC, you're interested in their services or applying for jobs, all the links are there on the screen for you, and you will be sent links in your email after the webinar as well. So I'm getting a few questions. Let's get started. Let's see, I've got... well, first of all, people want to know if they can reach out to everybody on LinkedIn. Would that be an option for you, ladies?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
I would want to add though that LinkedIn request, please make sure that you're as specific as possible in your questions, because sometimes we get questions that are so easily Googleable that it is almost like, we really don't want to answer those. So when you're more specific, then you will for sure get responses.
Perfect, thank you. And that's what I always like to tell everybody as well. When you're asking your questions right now, please ask questions that we can actually ask these ladies, because we're not going to get a chance to get them all together like this again. So Izabella, Stephen has a question for you. Wants to know that during your job search for that 1 year, you had a gap. What did you do in that year? Were you working, or were you just doing interviews? Did you do like a part-time job? How did you keep yourself busy in that 1 year?
So I was definitely very busy with the job search. I did not work. I did volunteer for a not-for-profit consulting group. So I added more things to my resume to demonstrate that I'm building my skills, as well as to expand my network. And I focused mostly on meeting the right people, volunteering, and applying for as many jobs as made sense.
Thank you. And job search in itself is a job by itself. So it does take a lot of effort. It's a lot of research that you'd be doing every day, preparing yourself for each interview. It does take a lot of work. So, I hope you realize what Izabella was going through during that time. So, Shelly,
if I may just add one more thing, what helped me was because I was lucky enough to sort of be unemployed at the same time with a group of people who graduated with me. We formed an informal group, and we met weekly to keep each other on track and to share information. So we sort of emailed each other a list of all the networking events that were happening in Toronto that were professional. We would go to those together. We helped each other with elevator pitches and resume updates, and that was extremely helpful.
That's actually something that, we here at ACCES talk about as well, because we are bridging programs kind of form that camaraderie amongst people, because it's after the program ends, they still stay in touch, and they're still sharing, job sharing, they're sharing events, just like you said. So that's something that we do here as well. So thank you for adding that, Izabella. Shelly, you can take the next question.
Yeah, so Nandini has a question. So when it comes to women and being assertive, can that often be misunderstood as aggression?
Give me a second. Man, I believe.
So I would say unless you're holding a knife or gun in your hand, it should not be considered an aggression. And if they are considering it an aggression, you're just in the wrong workplace that does not respect a complete woman. So find a workplace where you do not feel all these things and know how you manage yourself. And when we say assertive, we are just making sure that our point is heard, right? Like, for instance, I've had cases where two men are talking in the meeting room and I have the answer to their question, but they're just talking among themselves. And they're not turning to me. So I've had to bang on the table and then tell them, hey, I know the answer. This is the answer, FYI. So those kind of things is okay. Like I said, as long as you're not murdering someone, you're fine with it.
Exactly.
So one of the tip I got from a mentor was be assertive, but do not be defensive. So how to explain that is when you have a point to present, make sure you have all the facts gathered and present it in professional way. But if you are challenged, you don't have to be seen as extremely defensive because you have the facts and you can present it in a respectful and a professional way. So that is my advice.
Completely agree. I think preparation adds a ton to your assertive perspective. Preparation and confidence.
Yes.
Thank you. And Nandini has another question, and again, I mean, I guess this would help the women. She wants to know what's the line between talking about your accomplishments and making it sound like you're bragging, because she's got experience where there was a woman talking about her accomplishments, but there were men in the room criticizing her of bragging about her accomplishments, like she's better or whatever it is. But like, how can you talk about your accomplishments at the same time be humble so it doesn't sound like you're bragging?
So I can talk from recruitment perspective. When it comes to interview, we always advise people to take the STAR approach, which actually we're going to do a full webinar about it. So STAR approach means what is the situation, what is the task, and what action did you take, and what is the result. So when you apply those measure or steps, you can very well illustrate what you have done. Maybe it's within a team environment, right? So without bragging too much about yourself, but what is your contribution to the team success, right? So you can both demonstrate you are a team player, you help the team and build the project success, but also how where you as an individual contribute to the team success. So that is something I would, the approach I would take to talk about my achievement.
Thank you, Vivian. That's a great point that we also enforce here at ACCESS as well. Shelly's going to take the next question.
Okay, so Saina has a question and is wondering if there's any opportunities to volunteer at RBC.
So, as a recruitment function, we do not manage the volunteer. We do have a lot of, RBC does have a lot of community-related events, and we do encourage not only our employees, but also our, friends and family and people from the community who are passionate about a certain initiative to join us. In terms of volunteering, again, obtaining meaningful work experience within RBC, we do not want to get involved people and ask them to work without paying them. That actually is against our value. So we do offer internship opportunities for newcomers. Currently, we are partnering with an external organization called Career Edge. They provide valuable experience and provide the opportunity. If you are interested, you can check out the Career Edge website. There are a lot of, RBC is actually the largest host with the program. We constantly post a lot of the internship opportunities on their website. So I do encourage if you're interested in getting some experience and also at the same time getting paid, please do check out our internship opportunities.
I mean, if they're big. Thank you, Vivian. There is a lot of noise in the back, so I don't think everybody was able to hear you. But I'm just going to kind of rephrase everything. So what Vivian is saying is that it is kind of hard to find volunteer opportunities because even at ACCESS Employment, we encourage our clients to find paid employment, whereas you could be wasting your time volunteering because you've got the skills, you've got what employers need. So why don't you put the skills to test and find employment and get paid for it? And Vivian mentioned that you can check out Career Edge, and they have a partnership with RBC as well, where you can get paid internship positions as well. And that's something that you can find out through ACCESS as well if you like. But get paid to do the work that you're capable of doing. Get right in there. Nessie has a question, and I guess anybody can relate to this. He wants to know, because as a newcomer, should she just apply for an entry-level position and forget about all the great experience that she's had, or should she try to aim for the position that she's done? So I'm not sure what position she's had, but for example, if she's working as a senior manager, should she be focusing on senior management positions, or should she take a step back, or should she just go down all the way to entry level?
Sure.
I would say that if it was me looking, I would start by meeting with people who do similar work to the work I've done before, and trying to get their opinion, because positions may vary between countries, and what is in the role in Canada might be different from the role that was in a home country. So I think at first you have to understand how that translates. And the second, it's probably possible that you may have to take a step down. However, how much back you have to step in your career depends on how, I think, as strong of a network you build and how strong of a case for transferable skills you make. So I wouldn't necessarily assume you have to go to the very beginning, but be open to the possibility you may have to take a step back.
Thank you, Izabella.
So the next question, Dilpreet is wondering why it takes so long sometimes to hear back from either an interview or an application with their resume.
Yeah. So just on that, like I can kind of, ease that sort of anxiety a little. And as Vivian mentioned earlier, for every job, you see that there are 500 to 1,000 resumes which come through the pipe. So I would say that, like sometimes, for recruiters to weave the resumes through, it's obviously, it's a lot of work. The second thing is that you have to, like, as we've kind of spoken earlier, it's really about like how do you sort of enhance your skill set as well, and how do you make sure that you're calling out the right points as well for the job that's required. So similar to the other sort of previous question, it's really about, you don't really have to discount everything that you've done in the past, but how do you bring out the best of that, which is most relevant to the job that you're applying. So I think that's what you sort of need to think about. And in terms of it taking long to sort of hear back, I think that's just the nature of, the popularity of the role that you're applying for, just the sheer volume that the recruiters are dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hear me a little bit better now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I would definitely echo Ritika's point. From recruitment, I do see the insight is within recruitment, because sometimes our job posting would go up between, I would say, typical time period is 2 weeks to maybe 4 weeks. So after the job posting is closed, the recruiter will review between 500 to 1,000 resumes, and then they would the next step is, after the recruiter reviewed the resumes, they would propose some short listed people to the hiring manager, and then the hiring manager, depending on their availability, it will take them some time to review all the highlighted resumes, and then they would ask the recruiter, provide the instruction to the recruiter, saying, hey, those are the people I want to invite for the interview. So it does take a long time sometimes from a process perspective for us to connect with candidate, but it is a kind of experience across the board, and it's not only because you're a newcomer. Everybody who apply for jobs, they go through the same experience.
Yeah. And sometimes remember that organizations are just trying to build a talent pipeline, so that when the role is open, they know that they can consider these candidates. They might not necessarily have the role open right at that moment.
Great, that's true.
Well, thank you for walking us through the whole process, and it's great to hear directly from the recruitment and the employer, so that our viewers can really see that it is a long process and there's a lot of it involved, and especially the high volume is, and it's very hard to get through. And I hope that everybody understands that it's really nothing to do with them being a newcomer, but it's just the process and how it is. It's the same for everyone. Holly has a great question here. She wants to know, because she wants to reach out to people and do some informational interviews, just meet up with employers or HR personnel. She wants to know what's the best way to, get them to meet her for just a coffee or just to know more about the role.
I will go first. I think the best way is for the newcomer to do your homework first, understand the company you are asking the information interview from, and understand the role you're interested in. So when you're sending the request for information interview, provide all the information needed for that person to make a decision. And also, do not be frustrated if you reach out to one person and you didn't hear back. That person might be extremely busy, or maybe it's not within their role to provide that kind of opportunity. So feel free to reach out to 10, 20. If you hear back from one or two, that is a big win for you.
Thank you, Vivian. That's something that I always say. I always say reach out to 10 people and you'll hear back from one at least. So it's a matter of just reaching out to as many people as you can. So thank you, Vivian.
If I may add something, I would just say once you get the first person, the best way to get the second meeting is to ask for recommendations from that person. And if you can do that with everybody you meet, you have a much stronger interaction that way.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. These are such great points.
I just want to add one more thing. So whether it's LinkedIn or email that you're reaching out by, again, make your request specific and tease out some common elements between you guys. Like if I'm meeting Vivian, I'll tell her I'm interested in diversity and inclusion and big organizations and HR. And that's how I tease out some common elements and be very specific in what I want to learn from them or what I'm expecting out of them. And that makes it so much easier for the other person to respond.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
So our next question is from Roma, and it's actually directed to Vivian. So after one rejection in an interview with RBC, can they apply immediately to other positions in RBC, or is there some wait period to be considered for some other position?
It really depends. If you are applying for our branch roles, so if you went through the test and the assessment and then you got rejected, we do advise you to wait another 6 months before you can apply. But if you're applying for another role which is totally irrelevant, you do have the freedom and opportunity to apply to other roles immediately. You don't have to wait. The reason we are asking the candidate to wait for another 6 months for branch roles is because we have, in those situations, we have done our due diligence and we have assessed you. At this point of time, it was determined that your skills and experience might not meet the job requirement. So we want you to take this 6 months time and build your skills and build your experience so that you will be, successful next time you apply.
Thank you, Vivian. Sarah, the question wants to know, I mean, everybody's here in Canada now, but before you had come to Canada, what's the best advice you would give yourself now? So I guess that's for everybody.
I would say if I had to think back, the first thing I would do is prepare myself mentally for change. The second thing would be to reach out to people, as many as I can, even before I land in Canada, either through LinkedIn or some connecting network. And the third one is just have a list of your non-negotiables when you enter any new system. So, those are not values you'll be compromised about, but you are flexible on some other things.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything to say about?
say that one of the key things would be that there's more to learning a language than just the language itself, and that's culture. I don't think I realized how different the culture between Canada and Poland was until I lived here for a while, because on the surface I was able to communicate, but I wasn't necessarily getting the right point across because I used the words differently than a Canadian would have. And that's, especially when the differences are subtle, that's the hardest thing to understand.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
Ritika, did you want to add?
Sure. So I think my one thought, what I would say to myself before I came to Canada, I I think the one thing that really helps is how you brand yourself. Because some of us, and I think most of us come with very valuable experience, but it's just about how do you mine through all the details and bring out the key points, and that's what becomes your brand. So I think that's very important. And in some of the some of the Eastern cultures, a culture that I'm from as well, I don't think that is something that you sort of taught as you grow up. So I think that is one thing that I would think is very important. And that is something that I would have kind of reminded myself before coming to Canada.
For me, I would, when I reflect back, I would say do not give yourself so much pressure in trying to fit into the Canadian culture, because here everybody, and I would say a lot of us are immigrants. We're either first generation or second generation immigrants. When we first came to Canada, we all tried to fit in. Right, but there's no such a box for everybody to fit in. Everybody is trying to fit in that perfect box. There's no such box. So be proud of your culture and try to be open about new cultures and learn about new cultures. Build that inclusive mindset, and prepare yourself in the future for maybe more senior leadership positions, because you need to work with people from all cultures. But at the same time, do not try to do not be so much pressure into I have to be like a Canadian, because there are so many different definitions about what is a Canadian, right? So just remember that, and especially as a woman, we sometimes try to give ourselves too much pressure.
Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for their time today. Thank you, ladies. It was definitely a great webinar. We have a lot of questions, but it's very hard to go through all of them. But we are going to have RBC back, everyone. So, I mean, if you still want to get in touch with RBC, of course. If you still want to get in touch with RBC, you can check them out at rbc.com/access, or you can call this number to get in touch with them as well. And is there anything you ladies want to say before I move forward and talk about the next webinar that's happening with RBC?
I would say it's hard for everyone to look for a job, so don't give up and don't feel bad about it. It takes a long time for everyone.
Yeah, I would say persistence is what was said earlier. In terms of persistence, I think that's the key. So stay persistent, and good luck to everyone.
Yeah, and that reminds me, if there is one more thing that you could add before you come to Canada, make a list of all accomplishments you've had until then in your life, because that will come in handy. So you can refer to it and not feel so bad when you're not immediately finding a job. It will be a good confidence and morale booster for you. So come prepared with a list of your strengths and accomplishments in life.
So for me, is coming to a new country is a challenge, and there are a lot of risks, but you can also consider it as a new opportunity. So think about the passion, what you're passionate about, and pursue it. Do not give up, and do not compromise.